The Swiss Alps are absolutely gorgeous, but also incredibly dangerous. Just recently, 6 cross-country skiers went missing, 5 of which, all from the same family, were found deceased. The 6th person still yet to be found at the time of filming this video, but they're just the latest in a very, very long list of missing persons cases in the Alps. So we're going to start off the list with the discovery of 45-year-old remains. So in recent years, as the glaciers continue to melt, there's been a surge in the discovery of remains of people who have been missing for decades. So after being missing for a staggering 45 years, the remains of 2 Japanese climbers were identified in 2015, shedding light on this decades-old mystery in the Swiss Alps. A climber came across the remains in September of that year at the foot of the Matterhorn Glacier, about 9,200 feet above sea level. The bones were tested in the forensics lab, and experts managed to construct DNA profiles. People go missing so often in the Alps that police in the region keep this comprehensive list of people reported missing since 1925. With the assistance of the Japanese consulate in Geneva, authorities were able to locate relatives in Japan who provided DNA samples confirming the identities of the 2 climbers. One confirmation came in June, while the other was verified about a month later. The 2 climbers were identified: Masayuki Kobayashi, age 21, from Tokyo, and Michio Okayawa, then 22, from Chiba, a suburb of Tokyo. They'd gone missing way back in August of 1970, when they were caught in a snowstorm while attempting to climb the Matterhorn. And that's not the only climber who died on the Matterhorn. Next up, we have Jonathan Conville, another missing climber who wasn't found until years after the fact. Jonathan Conville was a young British climber who disappeared in 1979 after falling from the Matterhorn. His remains were never found until years and years later. He was found on the glacier under the Matterhorn mountain in 2013 by a mountain rescue helicopter pilot, Gerald Biner, who spotted abandoned equipment and bones at the edge of the ice. The remains were identified through DNA analysis, and Conville's family was then notified. The discovery of Conville's remains finally brought some closure to his family. They'd been living with the uncertainty for decades. The identification of his remains reignited the pain of the loss for sure, but they were finally able to start moving on. Conville's family established the Jonathan Conville Trust to honor his memory, which helps support thousands of young climbers through subsidized training courses. Now, next up, we have the remains of 2 climbers who'd been missing 75 years. So in July of 2017, the remains of a Swiss couple missing since 1942 were found by a worker. They disappeared on August 15th of 1942 after leaving their farm to milk their cows in a meadow nearby, but they never returned, leaving behind their 6 children. The frozen bodies of a man and a woman were found by a worker during routine maintenance near a glacier that's name I cannot pronounce, situated though about 8,500 feet above sea level. The bodies were remarkably well preserved in the receding glacier. Other items were found alongside them too, like backpacks, watches, mess kits, a glass bottle, and boots, all dating back several decades, and the couple was found dressed in clothing from the World War II era. Marceline, the couple's youngest daughter, at 79 years old, said, quote, "We've spent our whole lives looking for them without stopping. We thought that we could give them the funeral they deserved one day." According to one of the other daughters, their parents were walking to the valley on the morning of their disappearance. She remembered it having been a pretty pleasant day, but it was the last time she saw her parents. It's believed that the couple fell into a crevice of the glacier where their bodies remained preserved for decades. And just 1 month after the remains of that couple from 1942 were found, another body turned up, a German hiker who'd gone missing in 1987. Hikers were exploring the area around Matterhorn Mountain when they stumbled on human remains on July 12th of 2017. They were later confirmed by authorities to belong to a German climber who disappeared in 1987. The hikers had been traversing the Theodule Glacier in Zermatt when they came across him. Forensic analysis was then conducted at Valais Hospital, where the identity of the man was finally confirmed. He'd been in his mid-40s when he vanished 30 years prior. In 2018, the bodies of 3 Italian climbers were discovered on Mont Blanc in the French Alps, 3 days after they'd embarked on an ascent of Europe's highest peak. Luca Lombardini's body was recovered by the Mountain Police Rescue Service, while the bodies of his brother and his fiancée were located nearby. The climbers were found at the foot of the Green Needle, a peak in the Mont Blanc Massif, when it's believed they slipped and fell together. Luca had been on the climb as a birthday gift, accompanied by his fiancée and his brother Alessandro, who worked as a mountain rescue worker in a small Italian town near the French border. Rescuers managed to recover the first body after cutting the cord connecting the climbers. Mountain climbing, it's incredibly dangerous at the best of times, but the rising of temperatures across Europe has made things a bit more dangerous than usual. All the melting ice makes the terrain more unstable, leading to accidents just like this. Next up, we have the remains of a British hiker. Now, this missing man's name has never been released. All we know is that his remains were found in 2022 and finally identified in 2023. He'd been missing for over 50 years. His remains were discovered by 2 hikers in the Swiss Alps. The man went missing back in July of 1971. There were extensive searches at the time, but he never turned up. Really seems like search and rescue efforts in the Alps were completely futile before 2015. It wasn't until August 22nd of 2022 when his remains were found by 2 climbers on a glacier whose name, once again, I can't pronounce, in a picturesque alpine village in the Sasse Valley. Experts combed through these piles of case files of missing climbers to finally figure out who this person was. It took a whole year, but the assistance of Interpol, Manchester, and Scottish law enforcement agencies, they successfully traced a relative of the missing climber. They collected and analyzed DNA samples, and finally, a positive ID was made. But it's not just hikers and climbers who have gone missing in the Swiss Alps. It's planes as well. In 1968, a Piper Cherokee crashed into a glacier on the Alps. The plane and the passengers inside were never retrieved until decades later. On August 4th of 2022, a mountain guide stumbled on the debris from the plane crash. Local police made a statement about the findings, saying, quote, "At the time of the accident, more than 50 years ago, the technical means to recover aircraft wreckage in difficult terrain were fairly limited. Due to the melting of the glaciers, particularly in summer, it is therefore possible that other pieces of wreckage may be released from the ice," end quote. And yeah, certainly seems like things are turning up all the time. Really freaky to think that people come to the Alps every year to take in all the beauty and the nature, but hidden in the ice is all of this horror. Right around the time the debris of that plane being found, there were also 2 sets of human remains that were completely unrelated. In the summer of 2022, the thawing glaciers of the Swiss Alps unveiled 2 sets of human remains. The first find was on August 3rd, when French climbers came across skeletal remains in the rugged terrain of a glacier in the southern canton of Valais. Dario Andinmatin, a mountain hut warden, often frequented by hikers before going off on their ascents, said he thought the person likely went missing sometime in the 70s or 80s. And shortly before this, in late July, by another glacier near a popular ski resort, 2 hikers found the remains of someone else. One of the hikers told Swiss newspapers that the body was mummified and wearing 80s style clothing. Next, we have the missing Canadian hiker. A Toronto woman, Sonia Barnes, finally received closure. Her brother had gone missing during a ski trip to Europe 35 years before. Her brother, Gregory Barnes, was 24 at the time. He vanished in 1980 while skiing in the Italian and Swiss Alps. For decades, the family was tormented by this lingering mystery as to exactly what happened to him. And Sonia always hung on to hope that they'd eventually get answers. But Italian authorities reached out to Barnes, informing her that her brother's body had been discovered after more than 3 decades. The unusually hot summer weather had led to glacial melt, revealing Gregory's remains that had been stuck within a crevice. His identity was confirmed by the discovery of his passport at the site. Gregory Barnes was described as an enthusiastic outdoorsman who'd been working for AES Data, a Canadian word processing company in Germany. He'd visited his sister in Ottawa for a brief period before leaving for his European adventure. Gregory had an issue with his ski binding while attempting to reach the summit of a peak in the Bernina mountain range. He went back to the hut to try and fix it, and then went to rejoin his group, but he took a wrong turn, leading to a fatal fall into a deep crevice. And finally, just to end things off on a positive note, I'm going to discuss someone who actually survived. So in 2015, 19-year-old American student disappeared while skiing in the Swiss Alps. He was missing for over 48 hours in the freezing cold, but he ended up being found. He was alive, but suffering from hypothermia. After an intense search spanning over 2 days, rescuers finally located the missing student who had vanished while skiing near a resort in southern Switzerland. Authorities described the discovery as nothing short of miraculous. The young man was found conscious, but in a state of hypothermia and exhaustion. He was stuck waist deep in dense snow. The student had ventured off the designated slopes for some free riding back to the resort. But as he descended the mountain, he got disoriented and things just got worse when one of his ski bindings broke. He tried to navigate on a single ski but ended up tumbling into a stream. So now he was exhausted and extra cold now that he was soaked. Then he got caught up in a storm that blanketed him with snow, leaving him completely stranded and stuck for the following 2 days. He wasn't able to alert anyone either because he didn't have any communication devices on him. So it took a while, but he was eventually found and airlifted to a nearby hospital. So with all of that said, I've been your host, James, and I will catch you, yes, you specifically, in the next video.